Hello, everybody. It is Saturday at 10 o'clock. I am Chris Weave, and I have Alec with me this week.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, yeah. Good.
Is that Pee-wee we're listening to?
I don't know who. No, that's Itty Bitty.
Okay.
I don't know what the cat is annoying Itty Bitty, I think, as often happens. And
Okay.
And now we've got 3 cats upstairs that we spayed and neutered this week. 2 of them are going back to where they're being released outside at the used tire store where we got them. They have shelter and food and everything there.
Mm-hmm.
But one of them, from the time I trapped her, I was like, well, this one's pretty sweet. She wasn't running, she wasn't all frustrated that she was trapped and banging on the cage, and she was very mellow. And I was like, you seem sweet. And she's been sweet the whole time. So, and we're actually able to pick her up. And so we're going to try and socialize her here for a week or so, and hopefully get our favorite cat rescue person to take her. They took Luigi and Maria, the two other outdoor cats we rescued and didn't want to release, and they're living the good life at the cat. It's this couple that's and they have this huge house, and they have this whole they have an Airbnb room that they rent out for people who are interested in adopting cats, and as part of it they have like a whole bedroom, and then a whole home theater that's amazing, and then a whole cat room with a catio, an outdoor catio.
I love it.
And so you come and you play with the cats, and the cats roam around, and you see who you like, and if you like, you adopt. And so Luigi is there, and I'm getting regular updates on Luigi because I just absolutely adore Luigi, and he seems to be doing. They're obsessed with him. They love him. It's so funny. Everyone who meets this cat, and he is the Thomas O'Malley of cats. He is just the the scruffy. I call him the linebacker of cats because he like was 13 pounds of muscle. He has no neck, and he's all scarred up, and everywhere you go, he blocks you. He's like the ultimate lineman, and he blocks you because he wants you to pet him, and you literally are constantly falling over your I'm going to kill myself one day because he would just get right in front of me, and so that we're trying to TNR, trap, neuter, and release cats, and help prevent the cat population and from getting out of control, and and when we find cats that can have homes, we try and help them get homes.
My ex-wife and I did some of that back in Virginia back in the day. So
yeah, it's a worthy endeavor.
That was a while ago. I've been divorced for over 20 years, so that was a while ago. So speaking of the passage of time, Bill Shatner had a birthday earlier this week.
Yes, he did. 92.
Yeah, which is just amazing. Somewhere there's a picture of him that's aging tremendously.
It was interesting. I saw on I was watching the Ready Room, the Will Wheaton show, for the latest episode, and one of the videos YouTube popped up was Bill Shatner reacting to different actors imitating him. And he's like, I don't sound like that. I don't sound like that. It's like, yeah, you do, Bill. Yeah, that's how you do. They had Kevin Pollak. They had John Belushi. They had Jim Carrey. They had Chris Pine. They had all. It was great. It was really funny. Yeah, it's great.
So, let's see. I earlier today, Alex said, "Hey, what are we going to talk about?" So I was thinking about doing a presentation that I put together, but I decided to hold that one in reserve because I'm not sure how much time I'm going to have to work on it this week. Because I'm traveling tomorrow. I'm going to go to Des Moines, and then from there I'm going to go to Minneapolis. So Chris Carlson's going to be on the show next week with me, and I'm going to do it from up in Minneapolis. But I'm leaving first thing in the morning. But I've been traveling all over the place. Last week, I went to a science fiction convention. The week before that, I went to a game convention, and I told everybody that I was going to go to a game convention so there'd be no show, but there'd be a show the week after. While I was at the game convention, I found out about a science fiction convention, so I called an audible and then didn't have the show last week, the science fiction convention. So, but both were a lot of fun. The science fiction convention's a small con called Concoction. It's in Cleveland, and they're still trying to sort of boot back up again after COVID. Everybody I talked to said the con was way smaller than it used to be, than it traditionally is, which is good because I kind of looked at it and went, Cleveland, you're a city of 2 million people, and this is the best you can do. A metro area of 2 million, and this is the best you can do. But I have high hopes for it next year. That'll be better next year. And the game convention was a lot of fun. I got to see it. I didn't do any gaming. I watched some people game, and I spent a lot of time talking with friends of mine that I hadn't seen in a while, including I ended up having a fairly long conversation about Games Workshop stuff with one of my friends there. So that was good. You said to me earlier that you had heard there was some big Games Workshop news.
Well, there is. Yeah. Because this week they released the news. Well, a bunch of news. So first of all, 10th edition 40K is coming out, which honestly I couldn't give a damn about. I don't play 40K anymore. I play 30K and I haven't played that in 5 years. But 40K is just, it's just gotten away. I guess everyone wasn't happy with 9th edition, so they're streamlining the game, making it more accessible, which they need to do because they're hoping that everything that's happening with Henry Cavill and Amazon is going to bring a lot of notoriety to the game, which I'm sure it will. So you better have a very good streamlined game that's easily accessible by people. So that's the big news. And then the other news was the return of the Primarch Lionel Johnson, who's the Primarch of the Dark Angels.
Really?
If you're not, and I called this 5 years ago. I called 6 years ago. I called this because 6 years ago. Go ahead.
I was going to say we knew where he was.
Yeah, he was in the Rock, and we knew he wasn't dead.
We knew he wasn't dead. We knew he was in the Rock.
Yeah, the Rock is the fortress monastery of the Dark Angels, which is the remnant of their planet Caliban, from when their planet was destroyed during the Horus Heresy. A chunk blew off, and
Caliban had a bad day.
They threw some engines on it, and it's now flies around the galaxy. So 6 years ago, Games Workshop finally made the major decision. They were going to move the narrative forward, which had to happen because a lot of people were just like, a lot of people like me care more about the fluff than we do the game.
Yeah, I'm in that category too.
And so we were like, nothing's happened. So in 2017, I had been in the game for 19 years. I was like, nothing's changed in this game. I really couldn't give a damn about the grim dark, whatever. And other, they introduced new races like the Tau, and they after they lost the big lawsuit, they wound up renaming their armies. It was no longer Imperial Guard. It was Adeptus Monstrum or whatever the hell it was. And then the Space Marines became Adeptus Astartes. And so they were making changes and they were updating things, but there was nothing happening. And finally they said, we're going to move the game forward. And in 2017, the other Primarch who we knew about, Rabut Guilliman, was revived. And Guilliman was one of the truly great Primarchs. For those of you who aren't 40K fans,
why aren't you?
Why are you? The game, the history takes place in the year 30,000, and the Emperor of Mankind, who is basically an immortal, he is the sum of all shaman of the earth, and he basically creates these 20 well, he has created this Space Marine legions, and then he creates these 20 Primarchs, these super. I mean, if Space Marines are superhuman, the Primarchs are between the Emperor and the Space Marines are the Primarchs, and there's 20 of them meant to run the legions and be his generals, and they each have something special about them and whatever. And so in the year 30,000, he decides to after conquering the galaxy, he goes back to Earth, leaves Horus Lupercal in charge of his armies. Horus gets tainted by chaos, which is this primordial evil force, and there's a massive civil war, and half the Space Marine legions fight the other half, and that is what sets up the universe of Warhammer 40,000, which is in the year 40,000, 10,000 years later, and it is called the Grimdark because basically life sucks. Wherever you are, it sucks. It is billions, trillions of people on millions of worlds, and life sucks everywhere you are. So
it's the anti-Federation.
It is the opposite of the yeah, it is just the worst. And so so moving the story forward, they bring back Roboute Guilliman, who is, you know, one of the truly great Primarchs, and he is now
the Regent.
He's now the Regent. He's now in charge. He meets with the Emperor, who is almost dead, but is kept alive on the Golden Throne. And the ironic thing is, Roboute Guilliman is from the year 30,000. In the year 30,000, the Emperor was like, "I'm not a god, and we're getting rid of religion." So they eliminate religion throughout the galaxy. It is a secular society, and then in the 10,000 years after the Emperor is mortally wounded and turned on the Golden Throne, a religion comes up, seeing the Emperor as the God Emperor, and so Roboute Guilliman comes alive, and everyone's worshiping the Emperor, and he goes, "You mean my dad? He ain't no God. He'll tell you not." You know, so he's navigating this, and you know, and but back in the Horus Heresy, when this massive war was engulfing the galaxy, a part of the galaxy was cut off, you know, from the rest, and Roboute Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines in the 500 worlds, he was basically, his specialty was he was basically a genius for politics and logistics.
Yeah, he was Eisenhower.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So he had created this 500 worlds, and that were, you know, just enlightened, and it didn't suck to live in Ultramar, and so anyway, during the Horus Heresy, when Ultramar, the 500 worlds, are cut off from the rest of the galaxy, he basically, like, they don't know if the Emperor's dead. They know that Horus rebelled. They know there's a massive war, and all of a sudden they're cut off from everyone because of this big warp storm, and so he creates the what's called the Unremembered Empire, the second Empire Secundus, because he's like, look, we don't even know if there's anyone left alive. We may be the only remnants of humanity, so we better get our shit together. And he doesn't want to be emperor, so he's like, look, I'm going to run this thing, but we're going to find someone else to be in charge, because I don't want anyone to claim that I was trying to be emperor.
And it was very interesting because, you know, Lionel Johnson shows up at that point.
That's exactly right.
At which point Lionel Johnson goes, "How about me?"
Well, before that, Lionel Johnson shows up, and everyone hates him because Lionel Johnson's a dick. He's literally raised by monsters, and so he's totally detached from humanity. And he shows up with his fleet, and Guilliman's like, of all the Primarchs that could have shown up, it had to be him. And fortunately, right after that, Sanguinius shows up, the Primarch of the Dark, who everyone loves, who basically even Horus Lupercal says it should have been Sanguinius. Sanguinius should have been War Master, not me, because he is perfect. Yeah. And so anyway, that is one of the great novels in the Horus Heresy series, is Unremembered Empire. And so that's it. So now 10,000 years later, we're in the year 40,000, and shit's hitting the fan and the warp is overrunning the galaxy and Robu Gilliman's trying to keep everything together. Because now, back in 30,000, things were easy. The orcs were minor. The Tau didn't even exist. The Tyranids hadn't shown up yet. The Eldar were,
the Necrons hadn't shown up yet.
It was really easy. Now you're in year 40,000. Tyranids are overrunning the galaxy. Orcs are all over the place. It's just, the shit is hitting the fan. And so Robu Gilliman's got his hands full. But back when they introduced Robu Gilliman, when they finally did, which was used, I was like, oh, what they're going to do is, see, because what happened is all of the 18 legions, there were 20 legions, 2 of them disappeared. We don't know what happened to them.
Yeah.
Censured, whatever. The 18 legions, 9 turned traitor. So 9 turned to chaos. Chaos is this evil primordial force that lives in the warp. So like when you go to warp, you go basically into the warp where all these evil entities exist, and you protect yourself with force fields. But anyway, so all the bad Primarchs turned into demon. They basically became demon princes, except for Conrad Kurz, who was basically evil Batman. He got killed by an assassin. Everyone else, all the other,
except for Horus.
Except for Horus was killed. Yeah, Horus is dead. Kurz is dead. All the other Primarchs, Mortarion, Magnus, they all turned into demons, chaos demons, right? So chaos refused them; they became demons. But all the good Primarchs disappeared. Now, Ferrus Manus died. He got beheaded. Sanguinius was killed. So basically, you've got seven evil Primarchs are alive as demons, and you've got 7 good Primarchs who disappeared. They all, again, Gilliman we knew was alive. He was in stasis. Lionel Johnson was on the rock. And the other 5, disappeared. So the rust of the Space Wolves went into the warp.
Vulcan did something similar.
Corvus Corax, went off on him. And Corax, Vulcan of the Salamanders, Jedekai Khan of the White Scars, and whoever else I'm missing. Basically, they basically went off, and like everyone's like, Imperial Fist, Rogel Dorn. Yeah, so they all disappeared. So when this happened, when they brought back Gilliman, it was like, oh, they can bring back Gilliman. They're going to bring back everyone they can, right? Except for Sanguinius and Ferrus Manus. So I was like, well, the next one's going to be the Lion because he's the one guy that Gilliman does not want to show up. So
we know where he is.
And we knew where he was. So it was the easiest one to bring back. After this, who knows who they'll bring back? Lehman Russ is an obvious one. So anyway, they're bringing some life back into the 40K galaxy.
The idea of them bringing back another Primarch had been around for a while. I didn't realize that they had actually made an announcement.
Yeah, so this week they made the announcement, new model, and the interesting thing is they aged him. So he looks older. And matter of fact, everyone's saying he looks like Charles Dance, the English actor. It's fun. Charles Dance is all over the Warhammer Reddit or Discord, wherever you go, you see Charles Dance's photo because everyone's like, oh, well, now we know who's going to play him in the Warhammer movies, which is kind of funny. So
what's the latest status on Henry Cavill doing something with Amazon? Because
it's in process. We may not find anything out for a year.
Okay, we don't know what the show's going to be yet.
We don't know is it going to be animated? Is it going to be
because at one point they were talking about a Eisenhorn series.
Yeah, that's possible. He likes. I know Henry Cavill loves Eisenhorn.
Yeah, I mean Dan Abnett. And there's all those. Every now and then you see these lists of who you would have playing if you did a 30K movie. Who you'd have playing the various.
Oh roles. Yeah. Wish casting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of all the ones that have Henry Cavill playing the Emperor.
Yeah, but I don't think the Emperor would be I don't think that we're going to see that because he's out of action right now. I mean, if they're doing 40K, then
So
the
doing
Emperor.
40K, we won't see that. But if we saw 30, I want to see the 30K movie.
Yeah, so do I. It's so much more interesting.
Yeah.
It's so much more interesting than 40K. I can't even read a 40K novel. I mean, now I haven't read the Eisenhorn ones. You know, the Gaunt's Ghost books are good, but you know, anything with Space Marines is just bolter porn, and it's bolter is the gun that the Space Marines use. So you know, and it's very hard for them. It's very hard for them to give character to these Space Marines, being that they're transhuman, right? And so they don't come out. Whereas in the Horus Heresy, the books, it's all about characters. It's all it's all about the wonderful things that the authors have been able to do is make you care about all of the characters, not just. I mean, I'm a loyalist. I only play the good guys. You know, I play Space Marines. I have my own chapter, Space Marines. I play Sisters of Battle. I play Imperial Guard. You know, things like that. I don't play the bad guys. I don't play, you know, some people love playing Chaos or Tyranids, or, you know, Tyranids are basically the aliens from the movie Alien. And Necrons are basically Terminators from the movie Terminator. And everyone has their own thing. But the beauty of Horus Heresy is there's no aliens. It's just Space Marines. And they really develop the characters so amazingly well. And every one of them is unique and interesting. And you wind up caring about, I mean, like Karn the Betrayer, who is just a brutal assassin in the year 40,000. In 30,000, he's really a cool guy who's just a tragic figure. He's just a fucking Greek tragedy, and you just you have enormous respect for the guy, and you know, so they do a wonderful job of that in all the books, and there's almost 60 books in the 30,000K collection, the Horus Heresy collection, and it started 15 years ago and has marched towards the Battle of Terra and the battle at the Emperor's Palace, and which is located in the Himalayas. And and so it's all coming to an end now. So there you go. So that and then the minor news is new Terminator models, bigger than the old Terminator models.
Okay.
So you know, basically Games Workshop wanted to upscale all the Space Marines because Space Marines were looking a little small compared to you know, they're supposed to be 7 foot tall, and meanwhile all the Imperial Guardsmen, who are just the regular army grunts, they were just about the same size as Space Marines. So when they brought back Roboculiman, in the story they create a whole new generation of Space Marines who were bigger, and so they brought out bigger models, the Primaris Space Marines. And I always hated it. I was just like, just give us new models. We don't need you to work it into the story. But so now all the models are getting bigger.
Except it's like recasting in a TV show. Sometimes the right answer is just to recast. You don't have to invent a new character.
Yeah.
I really, this is my thing lately. I really wish in Babylon 5 they had just I understand why they didn't recast Sinclair. It's because he hoped that Michael O'Hare was going to be able to come back. But in retrospect, knowing now, the right answer would have been just to recast.
But he did such a great job writing him in.
He did. But the problem is that we threw away the entire Catherine Sakai arc.
That is true.
And I, having gone back recently and rewatched that episode where we're introduced to him, to them as a couple, we're introduced to her and them as a couple. I mean, that episode is just fantastic.
Yeah, I actually met Cynthia Nixon too, and had to babysit her daughter one San Diego Comic-Con.
Cynthia Nixon, not Cynthia Nixon.
Cynthia, what isn't that her name? Cynthia Nixon.
No, Cynthia Nixon is one of the women on Sex and the City.
Wait, Nickson.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Hold on. Let me. I could have sworn that was her name. No, not Cynthia.
Julia Nixon.
Julia Nixon.
Okay.
Julia. That. Thank you. Yes, I did get. Yes, Julia Nixon, exactly. And yeah, so yeah, that I agree. Great arc, great story, because way more interesting than Sinclair's wife.
Yeah. Then just Sheridan's wife, Anna Sheridan.
Sheridan's wife. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sheridan's wife.
'cause, we had never met her before, and there was nothing there, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
we're supposed to care about this character that we met earlier in the episode. It's like,
yeah,
it doesn't work that way.
yeah. But I mean, it was brilliant the way, uh, and this is what I'd love. I have all those Babylon 5 books, but I'd love to understand how he worked Sinclair back. Like when he realized, oh, what if I do this? What if I make him Valen? What if we do Babylon 4? What?
I'd be willing to bet, and I probably have the stuff to verify this. Yeah, that's a great comment. I probably have the stuff to verify this because I did buy some of those books that Straczynski was selling at one point, and it's got sort of the outline and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I bet the turning into Valen thing was the original series finale.
could be.
Doesn't it just sound like a series finale? Doesn't it just feel like a series finale?
It's a great reveal.
Yeah, and I think that was supposed to be the series finale, and he realized that he was never going to be able to wait that long. That if he was going to get O'Hare, he needed to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, yeah. What season was that?
Yeah, I want to say it was season 2.
Was it that? Was it that season 2? Wow, was it?
It was either 2 or 3.
Yeah, I want to say it was 3 because 2 was the first season with Sinclair,
With Sheridan,
right? Yeah.
Okay, tell me when we last saw him, portrayed by Michael O'Hare.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, season 4. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it says 1996, so maybe that was later than I thought it was.
Anyway,
I
wonder what happened, Julia Nixon. Let's see. Let's check out Julia Nixon's IMDb because I haven't seen much from her lately. I wonder if she's still acting. Not yeah, she really isn't doing much lately. Oh yeah, she was in Noble House too.
Okay, come on.
Yeah, they did it. I mean, listen. Vilm says, didn't Michael O'Hare have a mental illness? Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
Did he eventually commit suicide?
No, he just died.
He did. Yeah. Sadly, he was. Yeah, which is really a shame.
And he was having a hard time holding it together in that episode where he came back.
Yeah, was he?
Yeah, when the camera wasn't on him, he was having a hard time holding it together.
Oh,
supposedly. So that's what Straczynski said.
Oh,
so yeah, it was horrible.
You feel so bad, listen, the mental illness is, it's a serious thing, and your heart goes out to people who struggle with it. Wherever on the spectrum of mental illness, whether it's simple depression, whether it's bipolar. I've got good friends who are bipolar, and I mean, I love her dearly, and I sometimes she's, I'm like, I wish I could do more for them, let's see. Oh, got a bunch of people out here now. War Without. TJ says that was War Without End was the name of the episode.
That sounds right. Sounds right.
Zork Player says, when is the new one coming back? As a matter of fact, I just unsubscribed from a YouTube channel, Sidetrack, some Brits.
Season 3, episode 17.
Okay, season 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because I'm so tired of hearing about Babylon 5 or Stargate. They're coming back. It's just like, we'll know when they're coming back, because right now we're not finding anything out about them. So I don't anticipate Babylon 5 coming back. I could be wrong, but I just, that's a big commitment that someone, because figure you want to bring back Babylon 5, you got to commit to JMS for 5 years.
Yeah.
And who's doing that these days? Who's giving anyone 5 years? To remake a show that's already, I think that's a tough one.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what they could do differently this time. I mean, yeah, if you had it to do over again, I think you'd do stuff differently. But like Allum said, I think they finished it, right? And
yeah, right. Do I want them to redo things? I mean, because and there's some. I mean, really, you want to recast Londo and Jakar? Do you really want to do that? I mean, it's that's a tall order. I mean, who wants to follow those two guys?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's tough. I think it's tough.
But it was a great show. There's certainly things I would have done differently. They could probably, if they were going to do something, update the special effects. You could update the special effects. You can maybe tweak a few things here and there. I think that there is probably more that they can do with Stargate, if for no other reason than last I heard there was a cliffhanger at the end of a series that they never resolved.
Stargate Universe. I think a lot of people would like to see Stargate Universe continue, but
if we're going to remake something, the show I would probably remake is Andromeda.
Yeah,
because I think Andromeda had a lot of potential and just didn't get there.
Yeah, and the problem with Andromeda was it literally hit me like, oh, they're remaking Hercules in space. Like it just hit me as that quality show, like that kind of cheesy, tongue-in-cheek, and I just really had no interest in that.
Yeah, and it had its issues. It had its issues.
Alec, after the success of Axanar, what will be the next big theatrical production in the future Aries Studios? Funny you should say that. I was working on our business plan today. There are actually 5 things in the hopper. So, and I can't really tell you. Outside of Jewish Space Laser Corps, which we're going to film a pilot for that this year. But the rest of the projects I can't really talk about. But we are considering an Orville fan film. I will say that because we love the Orville, and we basically talked about going back in time and showing you like how did things start, how did they get where they are now. That's that kind of thing. But I'm working with JP Poole of Egotastic Fun Time. We've been talking about working on that together. So Stargate Atlantis was kind of done. There's Olive Drab loves your Andromeda.
Yeah, and Rob Davidoff said something similar. One thing about remakes is you kind of want to remake shows that have more potential than they used the first time.
Yeah. That was the problem with Babylon 5 is, and I understand why they did it, but season 5 was kind of wonky. I would have been perfectly happy them ending at the end of season 4. They didn't get Ovanova back, and Yeah, I don't know. Season 5 was a little wonky in my book.
It's the vagaries of television production.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, the amazing thing about, for instance, Next Gen is that they didn't really have anything like that, right? I mean, so Denise Crosby leaves, and that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and Next Generation was certainly groundbreaking, and at all, and it certainly took as we always talk about it, it took a couple of years to get its sea legs, and I listen. If we're all watching Picard, hopefully you all are. I would strongly urge you to watch The Ready Room with Will Wheaton. Not necessarily because of Will Wheaton, but because he gets the actors. And this latest one, I watched the one for episode 6, and they had LeVar Burton and his daughter Mika, and they had the other girl who plays his other daughter. And it was awesome it was really great behind the scenes, just fascinating stuff to hear about how they all got along, and hear LeVar Burton. I mean, really, LeVar, he is so excited that he got to, work with his daughter. And it was really, there's a lot of really good stuff in this episode. So I encourage you all to go and watch The Ready Room.
Somebody pointed out way earlier that that Will Wheaton is older than Patrick Stewart was when Jen started. So
that's great. Yeah, well, 87, right?
Yeah.
So 36 years.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yes, it was a long time. I was
an undergrad.
I just graduated law school, and so that is a long time ago. So yeah.
So I remember, because I'd stopped watching it because the first season was they did not cover themselves in glory the first season.
No, they didn't.
And I'd stopped watching it, and I was actually in a Games Workshop store.
Really?
And somebody mentioned it. This is when I had gone off to grad school. Somebody had mentioned it, and I said, yeah, why are you watching that? And they said, no, really, it got good. It's like, really? It's like, yes, it got good. You should watch it. And so I started watching it, and it's like, yeah, it got good.
Yeah. I remember where I was when I first saw South Park, the legendary South Park Christmas special. So this is
the private manufactured one,
right?
Yeah,
the one that George Clooney videotaped and sent out as Christmas gifts to all his friends.
It was George Clooney who?
Yes, it was George Clooney. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't realize it was. I knew it was somebody in Hollywood did it.
Yeah, Clooney. I am in Fullerton, California, and I go to this comic book shop, and I walk in this comic book shop, and there's like this counter over on the right, and they're watching the TV. There's half a dozen people watching TV. So I walk in, and they put it on pause, and they all turn and look at me. And they're like, I'm like, hey, and they're like, okay. And they start watching again. I go, what are you guys watching? Like, I'm thinking they must be watching porn, right? And they go, oh, we're watching South Park. I go, oh, so I walk up to the counter and start watching with them. And I was like, oh my God, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Right. You're like,
what was it called? The Spirit of Christmas, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
I got it somewhere. And then there was, so I remember at one point, the three videos that I had that I would show people were that Troops, which is the
Kevin Rubio's Star Wars fan film.
Yeah, the Star Wars thing based upon on Cops.
Cops, yeah.
And the last one was Tripping the Rift, the animated thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which later became a series. So 2 out of those 3 later became a series.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. John, you can get The Ready Room on YouTube. That's where I watch it. Just search the Ready Room on YouTube, and all the episodes are there. Also, I really don't mind Will Wheaton being an over cheerful host. I'm a 21st century queer person. I really can use some enthusiasm about yeah, because he is just over. He is over the top cheerful about everything. So yeah, and season 3 is great. I see, season how. So I was watching this. So I'm watching the Red Room, and they show a scene from next week, which is Vadic talking to whoever she's reporting to. And I was like, you know what? Sounds like the Borg to me. And I'm thinking, they took Jean-Luc's body. Why would they take Jean-Luc's body? What has Jean-Luc's body got in it? Probably still has some Borg tech in there. Maybe it's the Borg who are arranging all of this. I don't know. Who knows? But trying to figure out who's. I mean, Vadic is a changeling. Like, who's handling her? I mean, right? It's got to be some real badasses. It ain't the Klingons, it ain't the Romulans. I'm like, well, maybe it's the Borg.
So somebody asked a very interesting question. I'm going to throw it up if I can ever find my cursor. There we go.
With medicals, listen,
it would be cool if you could make it work, but
the one I think works is, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Star Trek, but a science fiction, basically something like a science fiction version of MASH. It is basically some sort of intergalactic war, kind of like Space Above and Beyond meets MASH. Like, what is it like to be in that frontline unit of an intergalactic war? A frontline medical unit of it, and and maybe it could be Star Trek, Star Trek during the Dominion War, something like that. And I don't know. I think there's a show there, for sure. I definitely think there's a show, because we love medical shows, right?
Yeah. Rob Davidoff says medical Star Trek sounds like Sector General, which is exactly what I was thinking.
What is that? I don't know.
James White, a science fiction author named James White, who I believe was an MD, wrote a set of science fiction novels all set in the same universe about an interstellar hospital called Sector General. And the things that he did all the background stuff, because you have to have lots of different doctors, but they kind of are grouped together. There was like a classification system based upon what type of pulmonary system you had, what you breathed and stuff like that. I didn't really read them, but for a while there, he wrote probably 6 or 7 novels in that series, and they would just show up in they were in the bookstores. So I remember seeing them, and they looked kind of interesting. One of them had, let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, that's not working. But let's see, there was Code Blue Emergency, Star Healer, Major Operation, the Genocidal Healer. I was looking for a particular one, and I wasn't finding it. There was another one called Ambulant Ship that had a nice thing, and some of them were collections of short stories, if I remember correctly. I don't think they were all novels, but Rob said he's got them on his Kindle, and he rereads them every few years.
Well, that's interesting.
So
yeah,
I like that. For NCC 4077, I like that.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Mercy Point. Yeah, yes. I don't know if I ever saw it.
I know I didn't.
I mean, I remember hearing about it. Joe Morton was in it.
You know what I would like to see more than a Star Trek medical show?
What's that?
Star Trek Emergency. Trying to like we got to rescue the people. Star Trek Search and Rescue, right?
Right.
We gotta rescue the people from the planet. We got to do this. We got to do that. I mean, I every now and then when I go back to Des Moines, I'll watch Emergency because it's on one of the nostalgia channels, and that's a strangely compelling show.
Oh, I love Emergency. I grew up on Emergency.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and there's a whole bunch of people that became physicists and engineers, and yeah, Star Trek Seabees would be good too. There's a whole bunch of people that became interested in the space program because of Star Trek. There's a whole bunch of people who became EMTs because of Emergency. So
that's interesting. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. So Rob says, if you want Star Trek Emergency, you should get the Ambulance Ship short story collection and read it. That's actually the one James White book that I actually own is Ambulance Ship.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I bought it, and I remember I did read some of those stories. There's one in there about a plague ship I remember that I read. In fact, I think that's the one that's on the that's represented on the cover. And I'll admit it, I bought it because I really liked the cover.
That's okay. I still buy wine based on how cool the label is.
That works. For a while there, I was drinking wine. I was having a glass of wine every day for medicinal purposes, but because it was medicine, I didn't go for the high end stuff. My wine had a giant chicken on the label.
Oh my God! Hey, listen, I tell people, and it's funny, but there's the wine from Trader Joe's called $2 Chuck.
Yeah.
Which is it was two. I don't know if it's still $2 a bottle, but it was. But at Walmart, you can get $3 bottle wine. And Crystal and I drink it all the time because the white stuff we get the Pinot Grigio, and it's really good. It's like it's table wine. It's $3 for a bottle. It's like because the ones I like are usually $14, $15 a bottle, but $3 a bottle, hell yeah.
Yep,
that works for me.
I like Rob's comment. You show up to do an alien distress call. How do you get the door open? And the other comment about this, we don't know if Starfleet has a disaster recovery and relief arm. I think it would make sense for them to do that. At least in the early days, I suspect it's whatever starship happens to show up on scene. Maybe later, there's people when warp drives are faster and they can get there faster. Maybe it's more like emergency firefighters. But yeah,
what I love about Emergency is seeing LA in the 70s.
Early 70s.
Early 70s, yeah, because it was late 60s. Early when was Emergency? It was 70. I don't know.
I think it ended in like 73 or 74. I could be wrong. It could have been later.
Let's look it up on IMDb. But yes, and I love it. Especially having lived in LA, you watch it and you're like, oh my God, look at that, or they're building the 118 or whatever it is. It's just
72 to 79.
So there you go, 72 to 79. So yeah, I mean that's a bit. I love LA history, and I always would have loved to have seen LA in the 30s and 40s, and by the way, even in the 50s, the pollution was really bad in LA. It is only cleared up in the last 15 years. A lot thanks to our good governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Because when I was in LA, so from 88 to 98, and the pollution was horrendous. And then 10 years later in 08, I moved back, and it was noticeably totally different. Totally, in 10 years, they had totally changed the smog problem. Totally. And because I remember one day I was driving up from Newport Beach, where I had moved in '08, up to LA, and I'm driving up the 5 freeway, which goes diagonally from Orange County up into LA. And I look at it and I go, I'm looking at the mountains going, I don't remember there being mountains over there. Because you never could see them when I lived there, 10 years earlier. And and then I started, reading up on it, and they had really done a lot. I mean, some serious work, and Schwarzenegger had cut through a lot of the nonsense and done a lot of bipartisan work on really tackling and it is totally different these days. The smog.
I've never been to LA.
What?
I've never been to LA.
Holy crap. How, really?
Yeah. I've been to Burbank. I've been to Pasadena.
All right. Well, that's more or less.
Long Beach. So I've been around LA.
I just haven't been into LA. Pasadena is my favorite. I love Pasadena. That's old because you feel like it's old LA.
Yeah. Old LA with a really, really narrow freeway. Narrow lanes on the freeway, short acceleration.
Oh, you're talking about the 110 that goes up to Pasadena from downtown LA. Yeah, that's an old freeway. Yes, I agree.
So a couple of times, so I spent a lot of time in San Diego.
I love San Diego.
A little bit of time in San Francisco, but a lot of time in San Diego. And on 2 occasions, I got off the aircraft carrier on like Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And of course, the Los Angeles Science Fiction Convention, LosCon, at that point was in Burbank, Thanksgiving weekend. And so I'd take my rental car and I'd drive up there. And a friend of mine goes to that con, Sherwood Smith, who's one of the 2 authors of my favorite science fiction series, Exordium. And the second time I actually picked up Sherwood and we went up together. So I did Thanksgiving with her family, and then the next morning we went up to the con. And so we were driving on the Pasadena freeway, and she said, yeah, this is the oldest freeway in the United States. And that's why it's got really narrow lanes and really short acceleration. And
I used to drive it every day. And getting on and off that freeway is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I lived in South Pasadena when I was coaching at USC.
So Wright says he needs to go back to San Diego and see the Midway Museum. Me too. So my last time in San Diego was like not November of last year, but the year before, when I was out at Nellis Air Force Base on the weekend. I got a chance to drive out to San Diego and visit a friend of mine. The last time before that, when I was actually still working for the Navy, my trip ended like literally 4 days before they opened the Midway Museum. So I never saw the Midway Museum.
Oh man. Yeah, I have not. I think I was on there when it first opened. And also they've got a nice little Air and Space Museum as well in Balboa Park. Which I want to say has the Douglas C. Ray. I think that's one of the. I think that's the plane that they have. I think they have an SR-71 too. I could be wrong. Okay, now we're getting that's out of control.
No.
That's kind of like Star Wars, where the scene in Star Wars in season 2, with when the Mando is testing out his new fighter. That was, and the 2 X-wings come up on him. Okay, wait, now you lost me. Now you lost me.
Although that kind of goes to what I was saying last night about the idea of that the Starship computer cores are secretly sentient and they talk to each other and do stuff.
There you go. Convair Sea Dart. There you go. And it has an A-12, so that's impressive. So yeah.
Sea Dart was the seaplane, right?
Right. The jet seaplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw an A-12 for the first time about a month or so ago. It was in February when I was in Huntsville. There's one at the Space and Rocket Center,
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was there.
and you can touch it.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, I mean,
Is it
like
indoors or out?
it's outside, and you can walk up and put your hand on it, and
Wow.
and you know there's a little, you can't like climb on it or you can't get underneath it, but you can, it's close enough that you can touch. And I looked around, I like circled the entire thing looking for a sign that said do not touch. There was no sign that said do not touch. I'm going to touch it.
Very, very, very cool. The big difference on the A-12 is the nose cone, right? That's how you kind of,
And it's a single seat vice a 2-seat.
and yeah, and they have different engines, right?
No, it's same engines.
Same engines? Okay.
And the A-12 was actually, I remember reading somewhere, the A-12 was actually a little bit faster.
Oh, really?
So now I don't have any numbers to confirm that. All the numbers were classified. And the thing about that airplane was, so I once got a chance to see a lecture from an SR-71 pilot. And he said, that airplane doesn't have a top speed in the same way that most planes do, because the engine got more and more efficient the faster it flew. And that's because it used the shock wave to do the initial compression of the air going into the engine. So the faster it flew, the more compression, and as a result, the more thrust. So it was at its most fuel efficient when it was going its fastest, which is not like how your car works and not how a normal airplane works. So instead of having a top speed, it really kind of had the speed at which the thing started to melt and fall apart. And so I said, I asked the question, I said, I know you can't tell me what that speed is. Can you at least tell us what part fails first? What they think would fail first, because they never tested one. And he said, oh yeah, it's the little cones in the engine. And I said, yeah, that's what I would have guessed, because it's pointy stuff has a tendency to melt.
Really?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, it's taken an awful lot of heat in a very small area. And so eventually the pointy stuff will melt and it'll break off. And it's not, the other thing is, it wasn't really titanium. It was a titanium alloy. It wasn't pure titanium. If it had been pure titanium, it would have had a higher melting point. And as a result, it could have theoretically been faster. But it also would have been a lot harder to work. And so they went with they figured whatever the alloy was good enough.
Huh.
But it was fantastic. It was fantastic. I never really, until that lecture, I never really understood what made those engines special. I previously just thought of them as being big honking engines, but they weren't. They had a really nifty trick. So, yeah, somebody said also why aerospikes have been a bit of a bear to get flying. Yeah, aerospikes are just, the problem with aerospikes is that by the time you put in all the extra heat shielding, you lose the efficiency you get from having an aerospike. So, Star Trek Atom 12. Shuttle 54, I like that. Wright says the F-111 was also speed limited by materials melting. That's an interesting claim, because the F-111 had a really crappy engine. The F-111 had the same engine that the F-14 A models had. And so...
Oh, did it really?
Yeah. The D models had a different engine, and it was much improved performance, but the A model was problematic. And I can't remember what engine it was, but...
And were the F-111s all finally consigned to being wild weasels?
No, they some of them went straight to the boneyard from, they had a conventional strike mission, and some of them had a nuclear strike mission, and some of them just went to the boneyard. So I'm trying to remember. think the Australians were the last ones flying them, if I remember correctly, and they only got rid of them a couple of years ago, if I remember.
Really?
Yeah, they kept them for a long time. They eventually replaced them with Super Hornets. So, but the F-111,
that was developed in the 60s.
Yeah. So somebody made the comment that they missed the F what? I thought it said F4 at the beginning, but oh, that's supposed to be a 111 with exclamation points. Yeah. Yeah. Wright says the EF-111 was a slightly different build. That wouldn't surprise me. And TJ says they retired them about a decade ago. That could be. I've lost track of time.
Yeah. Australia flew the F-111 through December 2010.
Okay. So that was longer ago than I thought.
Still, that's kind of shocking for a plane that was introduced in the 60s.
They were getting long in the tooth, and they were. I remember at one point they were really kind of debating what they were going to do to replace them because they liked the capabilities they had, but they were just getting along in the tooth. And that's, sometimes you get rid of stuff not because you've got anything better, but just because it's wearing out, right?
Right.
I got a new car recently, and it wasn't because I was unhappy with the old car. It's that, it had 298,000 miles on it and a problem that they couldn't quite diagnose. If I could have kept driving it, I would have. So, but yeah. Star Trek spinoff of Hogan's Heroes. That's funny. I love Hogan's Heroes, but I love Hogan's Heroes for all the stuff behind the scenes. Because most of the Germans in that show were Jews who had escaped the Nazis.
Wow.
The one exception I think was Hochstetter, who I believe he was an American Jew, but all the Germans were played by Jews, and
really?
Yeah, and a lot of them had escaped the Nazis. And when Werner Klemperer was offered the role, they came to him and said, "We'd love you to do this," and he said, "I'll do it on one condition: Klink can never win." So, yeah, that was great.
Interesting. This is a since we should probably talk a little bit
about Star Trek. So,
yeah, this just popped up.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see the different ships, but also reinforces what I love about the Enterprise E, the Sovereign class. I just think it's so great. That one of the problems I have with the Stargazer is that I just think the nacelles look like shit. I'm just like they're so inelegant.
I've never liked the Stargazer design. I just haven't. I've never liked it from the very beginning.
Yeah, the new one
or the old one.
I'm talking about the new one.
Oh, I need
the old one either. It looks like a kit bash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I need to take a look at the new one. So one of the things that I've got on the list of things to do, and for what it's worth, that science fiction convention I went to was the week before the con, and the con itself was a very productive time. And you guys are all going to get a chance to take advantage of it at some point. Because I did a lot of thinking about fighters, had some conversations with my buddy, Andy Presby, and now, and then I got a chance to talk with Andy at the con. That's the primary reason I went to the con, is that Andy and his wife, Joelle's got a book out that she's promulgating called The Dabari Snake Launcher, which is a fantastic book. And it's sort of the intro to, she's going to jump it forward like 100 years This is a book about the stuff that happens before they build the space elevator, and then she's going to do all the stuff after they build the space elevator. But Andy and I got a chance to talk about fighters and stuff like that, and so I'm finally going to do a presentation on fighters in science fiction.
Oh, good.
I've always thought that fighters didn't make sense in the Star Trek universe because I don't think the technology fully supports them. That, of course, that didn't stop them from happening in Deep Space Nine. But my response to all the people that say, yeah, what about Deep Space Nine is, yeah, and they were so effective that that's why the Federation has shifted over to fleets of fighter carriers, right? Oh, wait a minute. No, they didn't. If something's really effective in a particular role, you have a tendency to standardize on it, right? There's a reason why we build aircraft carriers. And that it just never seemed to make sense to me in that universe. It makes perfect sense in the Star Wars universe to the degree that anything makes sense in Star Wars, but it doesn't make sense in Star Trek. But I've been having a hard time wrapping my head around enough to say about it to actually do a presentation on fighters in science fiction in general and Star Trek in specific. But I now think I've got enough to do that. The bad part about it is before I do that presentation, there's a couple of others that I need to do. One of which is talking about this, which is an old FASA game called Renegade Legion, which has a very interesting essay in it that does a fantastic job of explaining how to think about vector movement in a combat situation where you've got high performance space drives. And so I need to do a presentation on that and then do one on the fighters, because I think I'm going to use the prefect one to set the groundwork for some of the stuff that's going to be in the fighter one. So that's one of the reasons why I'm glad that Alec was able to come on tonight, because I've got a lot of really nifty ideas and they all are going to involve a lot of work. You guys will be the beneficiary of it when I get it done, but it's all going to involve a lot of work. So I'm never going to run out of things to talk about. I mean, seriously, I know what the next 25 presentations are going to be.
Is Devlin Warlock saying the Phoenix missile was designed for the F-111? Is that what you were saying?
I think actually that might be true. I think the F-14 was what you designed when the F-111 couldn't do the fleet air defense role.
Some people who sound like they know what they're talking about.
There's.
Oh, okay. He said
there
no.
was something about there being more. Oh, okay. Yeah, the lineage of the Phoenix missile was kind of weird, because there was, at some point in there was, if I want to remember correctly, there were two missiles that had the same name. They reused a name, and it's really easy you have to pay attention to the numbers. The names itself will lead you down the wrong path, if I remember correctly. I'm not really a missile guy. So, but the Avro Arrow is an interesting discussion too. The Avro Arrow was a Canadian program that basically got killed for political reasons. And yeah, TJ says Sparrow versus Sparrow too. The Avro Arrow got killed for political reasons, and a big chunk of the engineers from Avro, it caused the demise of the company. The company just imploded afterwards. So Avro goes out of business, and a bunch of those guys ended up going down and working on Apollo. So all of the Canadian engineers that worked on Apollo had started out on Avro. So But the Avro Arrow is the like the lost airplane as far as the Canadians are concerned. It's the plane that should have happened,
It
and
should happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would have been good. It would have been good.
Yes, it would have. Yeah, yeah. Uh, Joe, is it Kanzler? I saw just already posted a screenshot on his Facebook feed from our live stream here of us showing off all the Starship.
Good.
Person. So kudos to you, Joe. That's all good. We love talking about starships. Was that you or me?
Oh, that was mine.
Oh, okay.
That was mine. I'm getting text messages. So I think it's Andy Presby sending me messages about Dune.
About Dune?
Yeah, because we've both been reading. So there's 2 Dune role-playing games, and then there's the Dune Encyclopedia. And that's sort of been something we've both been reading recently. So there's some interesting things where they don't match up, and I'm trying to figure out how CHOAM is supposed to work. Yeah, that sounds. Think I remember hearing that they had found one of the models of the Arrow, because they destroyed it all when the program ended. They destroyed it all. In part, it's a shame, but in part it was they were worried about just having it sitting in a warehouse because they knew it was an advanced technology item, and they knew it would be a target of espionage. And so the claim was that they would just that it was better to get rid of it so that the Russians couldn't steal it. So let's see. Wright also said he sent me a message. But I don't see it. That's interesting. Wonder if it showed up on my phone, but not on my computer. That is possible every now and then. Or no, he sent it to me on Messenger. Yeah, he sent me that picture. Yeah, that's cool. So somebody, Wilhelm said, check out Ward Carroll's YouTube channel. Yeah, Ward Carroll does some really good work. He's a former F-14 backseater, if I remember correctly. I don't think he was a pilot. I think he was a naval flight officer. But he's done he does some nifty work. He does some good stuff, and he's got some good guests who come on his YouTube show. So he's definitely.
That sounds for Ward Carroll. That sounds familiar.
Yeah. He's written a couple of novels, and he's started doing this YouTube channel, I think before COVID, but he's done.
Yeah, I know. I watch him all the time.
Yeah.
That
guy.
Yeah, he's very good stuff. Yeah, so. Very good stuff. Today I was watching after this morning we were talking a little bit about tanks in the Ukraine, and I watched a video on the mobile howitzer, the 155, is it? The Paladin.
Okay.
Which was really interesting. So basically, it has a little supply cart running around behind it with because it holds 39 rounds in, and then it has they have two support vehicles, I think, and one of them has another 93 rounds in it. I'm like, wow, damn, that's a lot of shit you're firing off.
Yeah, and it can fire pretty fast.
Yeah. Yes, it can. So, and one of its rounds can go 40 kilometers. I'm like, holy crap! Yeah. And those are not those ammunition these days are all laser guided and GPS and whatever the hell it is. That no wonder the Russians got their asses kicked. It's like that's you just do not want to be on the other end of one of those.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's talking about the Avro Arrow. I doubt that the prototype's hidden away anywhere.
Did I say the Ukraine? I don't think I did. I always say Ukraine. Why wasn't the torpedo from Star Trek Why wasn't the torpedo from Star Trek System ever continued? I'm not sure I understand.
I'm trying to think. Was there some torpedo
one that they modified? Like, why didn't they make more of it? I'm not sure where.
I don't even remember that. It's been so long since I've gone back and watched the movies.
Really? Oh, Star Trek VI especially is worth.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good movie. I like it. Star Trek V, not so much.
Not so much. Not so much. But yeah. And then Generations. I love Generations. But well, listen, it's we're an hour and 17 minutes into it.
Oh yeah, we should probably call it.
I got doggies that are craving attention.
Okay, so everybody, my intent is to do a show next week. It'll probably be Chris Carlson and I. We'll see if somebody else ends up joining us, but it'll be Chris and I from Minneapolis. And then my intent is to try to get back to doing some presentations when Pat's not around. I'm hoping that it's funny, I'm going to Minneapolis. Pat won't be in Minneapolis. Pat will be flying his airplane someplace else. So I will be there in Minneapolis without Pat. But next time Pat's back, we're going to do the second half of the first season of Babylon 5, if I remember correctly.
Oh, cool.
Because we want to do a sort of go through and talk about all the Babylon 5 episodes. And then I've got plenty of other things to talk about. I just need to sort of pull it all together. And I'm still planning on going to Marcon, where I'm going to be the fan guest of honor. They're doing a pretty good job of putting the con together. They're not quite as organized as I think they would like, but this is a brand new crew putting together this con, but it's looking pretty good. And so I encourage anybody who wants to do like sort of an impromptu Starfleet Tactical meetup, get a hotel room and come to the con. And if there's enough demand signal for it, the next day, come to, I'm sorry, not the next day. The con starts on Friday. So Friday, Saturday. On Monday morning, my intent is to wake up in Columbus, drive the hour or so to get to Dayton, and take anybody who wants to go to the Air Force Museum, which is literally walking distance from where I'm sitting right now. It'd be a really long walk, so I'll drive, but it's right around here. So hopefully people will come. TJ says that he'll be at the museum at Monday because he, of course, lives in about 20 minutes away from where I'm currently sitting. So that would be fantastic. So, but that's all I've got for announcements.
All right.
And I think I'm going to a con in Des Moines, but I'm not actually going to be on programming at the con. I'm going to DemiCon in a couple of weeks. At the beginning of May, actually, not in a couple of weeks, at the beginning of May. That's the con I go and hang out with my brothers. So that'll be good.
And we will be on tomorrow night for Axanar Confidential. We're going to review Picard season 3, episode 6. So join us 7:00 tomorrow night. And then looking forward to seeing the next episode. Things are getting good. Good.
I need to go get caught up on Picard, it sounds like.
Please do. So, all right, everyone. Listen, thank you all for coming out as always. And thanks, Chris, for having me on the show. I'm always happy to be here.
Thank you very much for joining me tonight. That was good.
And as always, everyone, be safe out there and live long and prosper.
Bye, everybody.